a live show that people were watching, where you were just talking about this relatively niche hobby?
It felt like a natural extension of the stuff we had been doing. And it felt like, I don't know. Like it felt fresh and cool, and like the tech was weird, and sometimes it didn't work the way you wanted it to, but at the same time, we were wearing makeup, we had built a studio, we had lights, we had a jib of Frank Adams lowering a camera into the shot and all this other stuff, and so coming from like these lame public access shows I was doing when I was 16 and stuff, like I had a weird leg up on a lot of other people because I was already relatively comfortable being in front of a camera.
GameSpot continued to evolve. It went from indie to being purchased by media house Ziff Davis, who then eventually sold it to CNET. By this stage, the editor-in-chief was Greg Kasavin, who you may now recognize as the creative director of Supergiant Games, a studio we're currently running an embedded series on. His two right-hand men at the time were Ricardo Torres on previews and Jeff on reviews. But when Greg left to start his career in games production, the role was never properly filled. Instead, Ricardo and Jeff sort of ran it together, with increased influence being exerted on them from the powers above. The original founders of GameSpot had come from an editorial background, but they were gone, and the site was now being managed by people who were less seasoned, more traffic-orientated, and didn't necessarily value the power of editorial independence as much as they should have.
There was an understanding about like, this is kind of how this stuff is supposed to work. It's not always supposed to be an easy relationship if everyone's kind of sticking to their guns and doing their jobs and stuff. I don't know that they always saw the value of that. I think that's something that, they corrected quickly. It was just it was a blip. If you look at GameSpot as a 20 plus year institution, like there was that brief period of time there where it was like, man, this went a little sideways for a bit. And I was just in the right place at the right time, wrong place, wrong time, whatever it was.
What happened to Jeff next has been told 1,000 times, with new pieces added as the years provided new context. I myself spent years trying to fill in the blanks on how it all went down, talking to friends and colleagues of Jeff who were there that day. It was a Wednesday in November 2007, and the office was busily preparing for the weekly live show, which aired on Thursday afternoon. Jeff had just had another brush-up with management, this time over a review of Kane and Lynch, which had made the sales department uncomfortable as they'd sold a large advertising campaign to the games publisher Eidos. If you visited GameSpot that week, the entire homepage was taken over by messaging about the game, alongside a 6 out of 10 review from Jeff. Jeff had had some run-ins with top brass before and felt like he'd come close to losing his job a few times. But this wasn't one of those times. It seemed like it had been dealt with and he was already working on his next review. Later that morning, his supervisor called him into a meeting and then called HR. He was told he was being terminated immediately, and as California is an at-will employment state, Jeff had no recourse. He was told to clean out his desk, and bizarrely was allowed to walk the halls for the rest of the day, saying goodbye to his friends and colleagues, who were cursing the names of those in charge. Jeff drove home that day, the same 40-mile commute between San Francisco and Petaluma he had done thousands of times before. But this time it would be different. It would be a number of years before he stepped foot in that building again. There was no live show that week. The Kane and Lynch review had been taken down and then reposted, and slowly over the coming days, rumours began to circulate about Jeff's termination. Popular webcomic Penny Arcade ran a strip outlining the pressures from Eidos. Staff from the website 1UP, who were located just a block north of GameSpot on San Francisco's 2nd Street, held a protest outside the lobby of the building in support of the remaining staff. In an age before social media, it would be a full 8 days before the staff would actually speak up, and it happened on the next episode of On the Spot. The show ran with a somber opening. Ryan McDonald, flanked by Ricardo Torres and a wincing Alex Navarro, explained the situation. The camera panned out to reveal a full set with previewer Brad Shoemaker, new hire Kevin Van Ord, community manager Jody Robinson, and reporter Brendan Sinclair, among dozens of other staff.
Obviously, we wanted to start today's On the Spot off a little different than we had in the past. The recent events and what happened last week in regards to our longtime friend and colleague Jeff Gerstmann being dismissed. It's been really hard on us, and the response obviously has been tremendously immense, and it's been on both sides. It's been it's nice to see that everybody speaks up, and it's been kind of pulling for us. On the other hand, it's been hard, obviously, seeing GameSpot sucks written 100,000 times in forums and stuff. So obviously we wanted to address this and talk to you guys today. Jeff was a personal friend to pretty much everybody. So it was really, really hard that it happened the way it did. But yeah, we really wanted to say that we love and miss Jeff and give him, honestly, the proper send-off that he deserves. So that's what today's show is all about. And obviously, you can see it's hard for me personally.
For Jeff, things were equally as bizarre. Tech blogs like Valleywag were running stories about the state of the site, which were clearly sourced from somebody inside of GameSpot. The LA Times ran a story about the firing, and Jeff's mother received a phone call from a newspaper in Norway looking for a quote. It was 3 a.m. when the phone rang.
You know, some of it was just like, some of the people I talked to were very like looking for more dirt. They were expecting me to get on the phone and be like, oh, well, here's where the rest of the bodies are buried. Like, but like, I was shocked. I was not happy about the whole thing, but at the same time, like, I feel good about the work I did while I was there, and there were so many great people there that kind of got caught in some of this crossfire a little bit. It was, it wasn't, I wasn't like, oh, well, here's the other nasty things that happened. There wasn't any, there wasn't anything else. So, so some people were coming to me looking for like some bigger story that like I just didn't have to give, and that was strange. It seemed like everyone wanted something from me for a little while, and it was a very weird time. And so at that point, it was like, because like I was like not an editor-in-chief in title, but like we were running an editorial team. And so there aren't a lot of jobs out there at that level. Like, it wasn't like I could walk into IGN or One Up or, there weren't, I don't even know who else was even out there at that point. It wasn't like I could walk into those places and say, yes, make me your editor in chief. Like, they already have people in those roles. It wasn't, it wasn't really a viable thing. So at that point, I was like, well, kind of need to maybe start something new. The weekend after everything went down, or it might have been it was like the Friday after, or maybe it was a full week afterwards. A bunch of people that I used to work with came up here to my place, and we just hung out, like kind of impromptu, just have a bunch of drinks, play some Rock Band, and that sort of thing. And Dave Snyder came by. Ryan Davis invited Dave over, and Dave was working on his stuff. They had a car. I think Boompa was still up. They had a car website. They were running Comic Vine. They were building Political Base, which was another kind of wiki-focused site for like political donations in the run-up to that election. There, this was November 2007, and so they were starting a new company and looking to build. They were building websites. And I was like, oh, that's cool. And place, and there wasn't anything else. So, so some people were coming to me looking for like some bigger story that like I just didn't have to give, and that was strange. It seemed like everyone wanted something from me for a little while, and it was a very weird time. And so at that point, it was like, because like I was like not an editor-in-chief in title, but like we were running an editorial team, and so there aren't a lot of jobs out there at that level. Like, it wasn't like I could walk into IGN or One Up or there weren't. I don't even know who else was even out there at that point. It wasn't like I could walk into those places and say, yes, make me your editor-in-chief. Like, they already have people in those roles. It wasn't, it wasn't really a viable thing. So at that point, I was like, well, kind of need to maybe start something new. The weekend after everything went down, or it might have been it was like the Friday after, or maybe it was a full week afterwards. A bunch of people that I used to work with came up here to my place, and we just hung out, like kind of impromptu, just have a bunch of drinks, play some Rock Band, and that sort of thing. And Dave Snyder came by. Ryan Davis invited Dave over, and Dave was working on his stuff. They had a car. I think Boompa was still up. They had a car website. They were running Comic Vine. They were building Political Base, which was another kind of wiki-focused site for like political donations in the run-up to that election. There, this was November 2007, and so they were starting a new company and looking to build. They were building websites. And I was like, oh, that's cool. Awesome. And, nothing really came of it for a little bit. And so I went and did a show on Revision 3. So I drove into San Francisco, did that show, and then on the way back from, or like as I was finishing up that show, I got a call from Dave, and he said, "Hey, you should come by the office in Sausalito and just come by." I was like, "All right, cool." And so on my way back from there, I stopped off at the office in Sausalito and looked at Comic Vine, the other stuff they were doing, and we sat in a room and ate sandwiches, and I had more or less committed to them right there. It was kind of like, oh well, think about it, and they were very much like, hey, why don't you just take a month and get your head together, like take an actual break because this is so crazy, and then let us know what you want to do. And so we kind of started building the website not too long after that.
Over the coming weeks, several of Jeff's friends would leave GameSpot. Some were burned out from games coverage, this latest spell just being the straw that broke the camel's back. But others were leaving to work with Jeff. Fellow Sonoma County local Ryan Davis was the first. The two of them set up a blog and then started to run a podcast, which they hurriedly titled Arrow Pointing Down.
So every single person at the company that we were, that I was now a part of were people that had worked at that old company. And so we did not want to give the appearance of people getting poached out of there. And I don't know if there was an actual non-compete with some of the people in the building or anything that would have prevented them from doing this stuff, but all of it had to be kind of quiet. And so it couldn't be something as simple as hey, we want to hire you over here. It had to be well, if you were no longer working and you needed a place to work, we do have some opening. It was very, very much that sort of thing. But I knew pretty immediately, looking at it and going okay, we want a team of about this size. And I knew that Alex would not be available. Alex Navarro I knew that he was not looking to do this sort of work at that time. He was, I think already thinking about Harmonix. He ended up doing public relations for Harmonix for a brief period of time. I pretty much had a whiteboard, I knew in my head that at that point, it was okay, this is me, it's Ryan, it's Brad, it's Vinny. Which is not how you're supposed to hire people. So be oh, well, what are the positions that we're looking to fill and all this other stuff? And but knowing what we were looking to build and we needed to be a tight team, who are the people that are going to be impactful in those roles? I was okay, Brad has a lot of experience in previews. He is a person that I know, he knows a ton of people around the game industry. I'd worked reviews, and so on the review side of things, we didn't talk to companies all that often. Brad had that in his role. So, he left. He left and had other, he had other things that he maybe was thinking about doing. It wasn't it was not a clandestine, he left specifically to, it was okay, well, he's out and we're going to figure this out. And then we needed someone to do video, and we had been working with Vinny for a while, and Vinny was fantastic. And I was okay, Vinny's really funny. This seems like a good fit for him. And so we kind of went about it that way. It felt like night and day in a lot of ways, but very similar in others, because we were able to sit down for the first time, for me, the first time ever. I never thought I would have the opportunity to build something like this. I was always very respectful and very envious of Vince Brody as the editorial lead of the founder of GameSpot and stuff. Man, he took a chance and built this thing and built it from the ground up, and look at it. It's this huge this monument. It's lasted so long. And I never thought I would have an opportunity like that in my career. It just never seemed like it was in the cards. And so being forced into it was exciting, because it let me sit down and be okay, what do we actually want to do? What do we think is actually the best way to cover games with a small team in this day and age? When we started in 96 on Video Game Spot, the videos had to be very low frame rate and very short because, no one could download them. And, it was we were doing minute-long video clips of gameplay, and that was revolutionary at the time. You had to install the real video player and all the, all this other stuff. And, here we were on the cusp of actually we can kind of live stream, the services to do it easily weren't in place. You still had to host it yourself, and that got very expensive and all that. And YouTube wasn't really there in the way that they are now. YouTube existed, but it was, I don't think you could put up videos that were longer than 5 or 10 minutes at the time. And it just was not a viable place for that at the time. And so, we had to kind of sit down and say, like, well, with the technology we have available, what can we do? And we wanted to be a podcast. The podcast, the Hotspot, was one of the most fun things I had doing in my entire time at GameSpot. And we knew right out of the gate that we wanted to have a podcast be the kind of one of the main things. And then from there, it's like, okay, well, it's like, do we want to write news? Or like, not really. Like, well, none of us are really news writers per se. It's like, well, we need to be able to capture video of games and put it on the internet, and we need to be able to talk alongside it or something like that, whether we're cutting it together or doing it, kind of on the fly. And so Mike Tatum, who was the head of biz dev for the company, just went out to the Apple store and came back with the biggest ass Mac Pro he could have gotten at the time and set it in the room with me and Ryan, and we looked at it and we're like, neither of us know how to use any of this shit. And we messed around with it long enough to figure out eventually we could capture some footage. We were like, okay, we figured out, I think the game we captured footage of was Hot Shots Golf for the PlayStation 3. We're like, okay, with this, we captured this footage. Now what do we do with it? And we hadn't answered that question yet because there was no website to put it on or anything like that. And so those early silly days of just like putting that stuff together, like we didn't really know exactly what we wanted to do. It was just a matter. It was very freeing in a way to be able to sit down and be like, okay, here are the things that we liked doing before. Let's try to keep doing that. And then the rest is up in the air. Like, for a long time there, we weren't even necessarily sold on the idea of just covering video games. It was always meant to be bigger than that. We were going to cover music, we were going to cover movies, like all this other stuff. But at the end of the day, old habits die hard. It was very easy for us to cover video games compared to like calling music PR people out of the blue and being like, hey, we want to interview this music, this artist that's coming to town. Can you set it? We stuck with what we knew and kind of just mainly covered video games and, flavors of Gatorade. It was the original mandate for GameSpot was we want to create a site that we ourselves would use. And I approached it that way and said, like, well, what kind of game coverage do I actually care about? And a lot of the preview related stuff at the time was just not, it was a lot of like carved up little parts of a game. Like, we're going to give you assets on these 3 new guns and this 2 new trees. And it was like, here's the rims and tires of Grand Theft Auto San Andreas. Outlets used to compete for the exclusive rights to run stuff like that. And it was a very different time. So, we knew we were never going to matter to publishers the same way the big sites did. And that was fine. We wanted to kind of do our own thing. And so that led to it being a little more guerrilla. Like you talked earlier about, long footage of games being something of a novelty or a weird impossibility back then. But for us, it kind of just became a necessity because of the number of people we had and then the lack of time we could devote to actual editing. It was like just stuff kind of came in long out of the gate. And so we first launched as just a WordPress blog, and we went to our first E3 in 2008 with just a WordPress blog. We could run videos on it, but it was pretty bare bones. It was mostly a placeholder. It was like, here's the name of the site. You can comment on these stories. And we were just kind of writing news and reviews and putting up videos here and there. And it was all pretty straightforward stuff. It was like that and the podcast. And then we rolled out the full site not long after that E3. It was like July of that year, I think. And then that was like, okay, now here's this full wiki. Here's, all this other stuff, better user features, all, full message boards, all this other stuff. And so we went at it that way for a while, and then the premium membership stuff came later.
It wasn't just old staff who were leaving GameSpot for Jeff's new project. Users were flocking too. Once the full site was launched, tens of thousands of profiles were created, a large portion of which were disenfranchised GameSpot fans who wanted to support Jeff and the staff who had left. I was one of them, and I remember that time well. The passion and excitement of those days was one of the most powerful moments I've had as part of an online community, and the folks at Whiskey Media used that passion to help fund the site. Giant Bomb had taken the ad-free subscription model that GameSpot had pioneered and added much more. For $5 a month, you not only supported some of your favorite creators, but got access to bonus videos and features. New users signed up in their droves.
The launch of the site proper exceeded our expectations. In a way that like wiki submissions were taking a week or more to approve because so many people were signing up and contributing and all this other stuff. It was just we were staying up all night working on just the community stuff, moderation stuff. And then the premium membership stuff did well out of the gate. You know, we went back and forth on a few ideas about, you know, what are we offering here and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, it did really well that first day. Advertising was never really a thing for us. It's, you know, we had one in-house ad person eventually for a brief period of time, but like, you know, advertising is all about eyeballs, and we were never going to be the biggest website in the world. It was, you know, we were about, okay, well, we want people who really care about this stuff. And so, you know, in advertising, you're trying to make a case for just like, oh no, this is a smaller audience, but they're smarter and they spend more money. And, you know, you have to, like, at some point you have to go out and educate, you know, brands and say, like, here's why you want to advertise here instead of there, like spend your money with us because our people are smarter or this and that. And, you know, at the end of the day, advertisers just want eyeballs. So like, you can go in and pitch that story all you want. It's just not, it's not how the advertising model typically works. So we had a few things where, like, you know, we had some sponsored achievements on the site, and there was a live stream. I was actually against it, but they did a live stream for NCSF SUV SD, I think it was the ordering of that, an Adult Swim show that Paul Shearer was on. It's actually, I thought it was pretty funny. They did a live stream, like live watch along with it. And so we were doing a few things like that were innovative at the time, I guess. And so you would have people who understood, like, hey, the internet is changing. It's not necessarily about just raw eyeballs. We want to find people who are more engaged with a thing. And, you know, this was kind of like the nascent form of like the influencer type stuff about like figuring out like who are these people we can get that have sway with their audiences and so on and so forth. But us being an editorial operation, we could never really go fully into that world. So the stuff that I would be comfortable doing in those spaces would, you know, kind of, we ended up shooting down a lot of stuff, probably more stuff than we signed, because it was like, no, I don't think we can do that. So the advertising stuff was never really going to be for us. And for those reasons, it just, you know, the advertising market just wasn't really compatible with our size and our scope, but also, you know, just kind of our mentality and where we were at with stuff. So we wanted to try to find something different. And again, that was another Dave Snyder. Like Dave was kind of the main first proponent about like, no, people will pay for good stuff on the internet. I know it. And I think I was a little more like, I don't know, man, people like to pirate stuff. But he's like, no, this'll like, he won me over pretty fast, and we went through with it. We went on with it.
Giant Bomb has been running for a decade, and in that time the site has evolved to keep up with the changing desires of its audience. But there are a few shows that have lasted the test of time. Their weekly podcast, The Giant Bombcast, has had over 570 episodes, and is one of the most popular video game podcasts in the world. And their Quick Look series predated the creation of Let's Plays, still exists today. I asked Jeff to tell me what some of his favorites are. He made mention of their live E3 internet show, and eventually making the podcast profitable as some of his proudest achievements. As shows have come and gone, so too have staff. Just like GameSpot created a platform for Jeff to make a name for himself, Giant Bomb has become an incubator of talent all to itself. As the sort of captain of the ship as well, what does it feel like to be responsible for kind of what Giant Bomb has become in terms of its as an incubator for talent, right? You've had people come through the doors and leave out the other side to go on to wonderful careers as well. Do you take a pride in that, especially considering, you know, how you seem to have a reverence for the people who gave you opportunities in your early career?
It's cool. I don't always think about it. Like, I don't know. I look at it and go like, did I do anything for anyone? I don't know. I'm just here. I don't know. I just do my thing. And I don't know that I always, I used to take it really personally back in the GameSpot days when anyone would leave. I would always think like, man, why would you go do something else? Like we're doing great. It's doing all this other stuff. And now I look at it in retrospect and go like, maybe it was people like me in the senior roles for as long as we were that led to people below us wanting to get out for more opportunities. And you're like, man, yeah, okay. Yeah. But yeah, I used to take it really personally because I just, it was great to just, there were times when, like, man, this is the best team I've ever worked with. This is great. Oh, wait, 3 people are leaving over the course of 6 months. What's going on? And, the people that left in the run up to me leaving at the time, I was really bummed out. In retrospect, I was like, oh, yeah, okay, I get it. And things change and people change and they want something else out of their careers and they want to take on new challenges and all that sort of stuff. And I think that's great. At the same time, like I miss the people that have moved on. Like there was a time there that there were, we were starting to have conversations. It's like, no, we need to move Danny O'Dwyer over to Giant Bomb. Like we have this should happen. And then he went out and found fame and fortune on his own without us. And I was like, well, shit, let that one slip away, I guess.
There will always be a part of me in my my professional sort of hindsight that will always. I remember that when you mentioned that to me at a certain point, can't remember, was it when I had already handed in my notice, or I think it was probably a little bit before maybe, where like that is like the ultimate dream come true. The ultimate dream come true. But now I have a new dream come true, which is that I get to just pop into the office and review European sports games, twice a year or whatever.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I have a code for FIFA that I don't know what to do with, so might be calling you for that one. But yeah, it's stuff like that. Like it's great seeing people out there doing their thing. And the thing I've tried to be better at this time around that I was terrible at back in the GameSpot days is try to keep in touch with people on a regular basis. Like it can be so easy just to put your head down and be like, I'm surrounded by these people. These are the people I see every day. These are the only people I talk to because I don't have time for anything else. Discord has actually been really useful at that, honestly. Like, hey, let's keep in touch with friends and try to maintain these friendships and stuff like that. So yeah, like it's great being in regular contact with, people like Patrick and Austin Walker and stuff like that.
Giant Bomb lived under the Whiskey Media banner for 4 years, but the media startup was struggling to grow at a rate required by the landscape of Bay Area investors, and so the decision was made to fold the company, to sell its assets to suitable suitors. What happened next seemed impossible to anybody watching from the stands.
It was the process of us selling the company was strange, for a lot of the reasons you would expect. But I think the thing that happened, like every startup that sells or fails or anything always likes to say, we were just too early.
Right.
We had the best ideas too early. But like in some cases, if we were a year later or something like that, and YouTube had been more viable for longer form videos, like who knows what would have happened. We made the best choices we could along the way. But at the end of the day, they had launched a lot of other sites and wanted it to be this big network. And when that I think that wasn't happening at the rate that they needed it to happen. So it became a case of just like, okay, maybe it's time to move on and move on to a different business and do a different thing. And so, we were at that point lucky enough to be something that was sellable. Like you think about the number of startups, especially the number of content companies that launched and just went under, and with Giant Bomb, with the premium memberships and that sort of stuff, like we were in a pretty good position there, to where we were doing something that people I think were just starting to get a sense of, just like, hey, maybe this like direct to consumer, like subscription type stuff is something we should care about. And so it was something that, that people were starting to wake up to and be like, hey, maybe we want some kind of back pocket plan in case this advertising thing doesn't always work the way it works now. So Mike Tatum, the head of biz dev for Whiskey, asked me one day, he said, hey, would you be open to maybe selling the company to CBS? And I just laughed. And I was like, yes, of course, absolutely. Go have those conversations. That's the craziest thing anyone's ever said to me. Absolutely. Yeah, of course. Because obviously, like, that's the thing, like, it was a very different time, a very different company, all that other stuff. Like the stuff that happened to me was like this blip on this timeline of this multi-decade operation, that has had good people at the helm of it for almost all of its time, so and most of the people that were there when I was there last time and involved in some of that unpleasantness were long gone. So at this point it was like, hey, do you want to go talk to John Davison about, maybe coming over there? And Simon Whitcomb. And I was like, oh, well, yeah, they've been around this space for years. It's totally different people. It's like, yeah, of course. And there were other people that were interested. The company that ended up buying Tested was, like lightly interested, but not in a way that sounded all that exciting to me. And so, yeah, I had lunch with John and Simon, and this would have been, it was around the holidays. I guess it was like, I don't remember the exact year anymore. It all runs together, man. But it was the holidays. It was like right after Christmas. We went into Christmas break knowing that it was likely that the company was going to be sold early the following year, and that the GameSpot team was interested. It was kind of like what I went into the holidays knowing. And so I met with them and we just kind of talked it out, and like they had a good head on their shoulders, and we were, like fairly attractive, I guess, in the sense that we had our own revenue. It wasn't like we were coming in and like, okay, you got to bolt us to a sales team, you got to bolt us to this, because otherwise we're going to be losing money overnight. We were coming in doing pretty well in the grand scheme of things. So yeah, I wasn't in all the negotiations and meetings and all the back and forth for that sort of stuff, but yeah, it was a exciting, weird time because we knew it was happening, but we couldn't say it was happening. And rumors started getting out there a little bit, and there's just a lot of. It was a very strange time. It was so hectic. My dad went into the hospital as we were packing up, the office, right, to get everything out, and we were entering this quiet period where we wouldn't even have an office, and we couldn't even say why, which was so unlike everything we had done with our community and all this other stuff. It was like, here's the thing where we are forced to not talk about this deal or not act like anything is weird, but we also are not in an office. It's hard to generate content when you're not in the studio. And there was just so much going on around that time. It was bizarre. I came out of it feeling like we did pretty good. For someone who came into that situation with little more than his good name, I feel like I came out of it better, personally better, better at my job, better at more types of things, better at running a little bit more respect for what it takes to run a business, but also knowing when to sacrifice the business needs for editorial interests and, like that sort of stuff. Like I was able to grasp more pieces of the puzzle, I guess. And so, yeah, we came back in, and it was fun because I had set up Giancarlo Veronini. I set him up real good, where I saw him at an event the week before the deal was getting announced, and I think my exact words were, "Hey, I'll see you next week." And then we left this Microsoft event or whatever we were at, and
did he know? Did he twig it or?
He didn't know at the time, but he pieced it together, and he was like, "Oh my God, you were saying what you were saying." Yeah, it was, because we still talk to a lot of those people, they were over there.
That's so strange. I think I told you we were in the bizarre situation where the UK, I was at GameSpot UK, and the UK sales team had leaked the deal to us. I think maybe 6 weeks before it was announced.
Oh, wow.
We all knew, and we couldn't tell the American office about it.
This GameSpot UK for you, man.
Yeah.
One year they tried to give FIFA an 11.
Did they actually?
Actually, yes. Oh. They turned in a FIFA review that was trying to give it an 11 out of 10. And we had to be like, no, you absolutely cannot under any circumstances do that.
For most of Jeff's life, his career and hobby have been impossibly tangled, and so for much of his life, his identity has been too. For years, his Xbox gamer tag was Game Spotting. He only changed it when he set up his new site to Giant Bombing. But since selling to CBS, he's tried to create more distance between these two worlds. Jeff isn't the most social person you'll work with. He commutes to and from Petaluma every day, a 40-mile drive during Bay Area rush hour. Perhaps it's why he doesn't socialize much after work, or maybe it's a convenient excuse to not have to. At his desk, he sits with headphones on, usually working on something. When he talks to you, he speaks openly and honestly. When he doesn't want to talk, he doesn't. He's always struck me as a person whose gears are always turning, thinking about the work, half enjoying it and half burdened by the weight of it all. He's tried to get better at delegating responsibility, but in many ways Giant Bomb is his child, and he feels he needs to be in the room when decisions about it are being made.
For me, that's the struggle. Like my personal struggle is like the time management aspect of it, and like keeping everything going, because before I had other things going on in my life, you could throw as much waking time as you could at a thing. And also we owned the company. So it was a sick cycle where in the back of your head, you could always say like, well, I need to work until 3 a.m. because this could be the video that puts us over the edge and turns this thing into an even bigger thing. And so it was very easy to justify to yourself incredibly unhealthy work habits that didn't make the site better, that didn't lead to necessarily more content or anything like that. It was very easy to spend every waking moment thinking about it. And now I don't. And at first that made me feel guilty. It's been that's the weird struggle of just like, and it's all just kind of a weird head trip about like, okay, I am, and the worry goes from like, am I spending enough time with my family? Am I spending enough time with my job? Like this seems like stuff that everyone else figured out a long time ago, but it's I'm coming to it over these last few years and go like, man, this is an interesting new challenge, but it's been great. Like I wouldn't, if it wasn't for my wife, I don't think I would. I'm not even sure if I would still be doing this, honestly. Like I probably would have completely burned out or something by now, without her to kind of have my back and all that sort of stuff. She's been great. She's the best thing that ever happened to me. Totally.
Trying to create a distance between life and work you're passionate about can often be a struggle, but it was impossible for the staff of Giant Bomb to do so in the summer of 2013. This July will mark the 6th year since the tragic passing of their friend and colleague Ryan Davis, and in recent months it's been on Jeff's mind a lot more. Last year, the site launched a 24-hour live stream that plays videos from throughout the 10-year archive of Giant Bomb, and users often vote for videos that Ryan is featured in. So Jeff is confronted with the memory of their friendship a lot more these days.
Going back to those videos and stuff, like, the relationship that Ryan and I had was very complicated and changed a lot over the years because, we were close friends, we were in a band, we were inseparable. I got him hired. We became co-workers. I became his boss. And so the relationship changed along the way too. So, yeah, I don't know. When I think about Ryan, I think about the days before we were working together primarily. Those are my Ryan memories usually. The videos, the stuff we did along the way, like, we did some really cool shit. And I like a lot of it, just fine. But me personally, I think about the stuff prior to, when Ryan was answering phones for AT&T internet at 3 a.m, when people couldn't get into their email. That's the Ryan I think of, the Ryan that was living with 3 other guys in this tiny ass place, and we'd just go hang out, and he wasn't 21 yet, so I was indispensable. And like that sort of stuff. That's the stuff I think about when I think about Ryan.
When I asked Jeff about the future of Giant Bomb, he's excited but cautious. Years of working on the internet has taught him to be careful about overpromising before stuff is built. Perhaps his experience have also taught him not to plan too far ahead. As the site enters its 11th year, it's been changing its programming to try and bring in new viewers. Giant Bomb has been successful. It pays its own way at CBS, but it's still a website owned by a large media organization. So often the future is planned quarter by quarter, year by year. Perhaps the most surprising thing in coming to know Jeff is how excited he still is about games. His Twitter profile reads, "I've been writing about video games my entire life. It would be insane to stop now." So you wouldn't blame him for being burnt out on video games after 30 plus years of talking about them. But if nothing else, the thing that strikes me about Jeff Gerstmann is that these days when you can be so cynical about video games, he's still a true believer in the power of the medium, whether it be players of Pac-Man or Fortnite.
I think games are only going to continue to get more popular. You know, like if you look at what we're seeing with something like Fortnite right now, like it's having a moment that, you know, it's that Minecraft had before it. You know, like it's huge. It's bigger than a Five Nights at Freddy's. It's bigger than, you know, it's crazy. But like I'm just trying to think about, like, you know, like games that have like penetrated the mainstream in a huge way. Like what we're seeing with Fortnite right now feels almost unprecedented. Like it's Pac-Man-esque. You know, like Minecraft was huge, but not in a like kids loved Minecraft, kids love Roblox, but Fortnite is cut such a wide swath across society to where like all these, you know, popular mainstream sports figures are now doing Fortnite dances in actual sports, and it's never been like that before. So in some ways, like gaming has kind of never been cooler or less cool depending on your perspective, because it's literally everywhere. You know, everyone is carrying around a device in their pocket that is capable of feats that like it would have been, you know, insane. Like no console 10 years ago could have done anything like this. You know, granted the controls are still bad, but you know, the technology is pushed so far forward, and it's so pervasive and in so many different places and so many different styles. You look at like Pokemon Go and the idea of location-based gaming, you know, people getting out there and moving around to catch Pokemon, like all that stuff is amazing and it's crazy. But like where we're going on that front, I think if the technology bears out and data caps don't kill the dream and all this other stuff, you know, we're going to reach a point where anyone can play, you know, top-level video games on the device they carry around with them every single day. And in some cases they are. I mean, Fortnite's on phones, you know, for whatever that's worth. So I think that this isn't going to go away. This is gaming's kind of big push into the mainstream kind of once and for all. And I think that, you know, games coverage, you know, that's a more complicated thing. If you look at, you know, YouTube right now with demonetizing videos and, you know, everyone trying to stream and everyone trying to, you know, have a side hustle streaming or something like that. You know, kids growing up like commentating games as they're playing them because they just watch people on YouTube and they think that's how you're supposed to play games. That's it. That's where we're going, you know, and or that's where we are already. And so I think over the next 5 years it'll be tumultuous, because I think you'll see the bottom drop out of ads in a way that makes the Twitch streaming and YouTube and like the kind of hobbyist turned pro streamer. I think that's going to have to even out. I think it's only going to get harder, and I think that will keep a lot of people out eventually, or it'll, you know, lead to a growth in just the hobbyist streaming. And people will have different expectations. They'll just be like, I'm streaming because I like it. I'm not going to sit here and think I'm going to make a bunch of money. The same way I made public access when I was 16. It's like, oh, we're on television. Like, I'm not making any money off it the way real people on TV do, but I just want to do it because it's fun.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the No Clip Podcast. Sorry it took so long to get this one out. It was quite a long story, and it's also kind of an impossible story to tell in its, you know, entirety. So I had to pick my battles and figure out a narrative that kind of worked. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope it was a nice piece to celebrate a website that means a lot to me, and I'm sure a lot to you as well. Now for the housekeeping. If you want to follow us on Twitter, we are at NoClipVideo. I am at Danny O'Dwyer. We have r/NoClip if you're interested in getting on board and talking on Reddit. And of course, if you're a patron, keep up to date on all the patron posts. Podcasts are available on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Play, and loads
What's up, everybody? Welcome to Kinda Funny Games Daily for Monday, April 1st, 2019. I'm one of your hosts, Greg Miller, alongside Forbes 30 Under 30, a.k.a. the second best baby blues in San Francisco, a.k.a. the engaged one at Tim Geddes.
Let Tim host.
How you doing, sir?
I've been better.
What's happening?
Little out of breath
You
right
literally
now.
ran into the building.
Yeah, I spent a little too long prepping Internet Explorers at home.
Sure.
I was like, I still got time to get Starbucks.
Sure.
Spoiler alert, I didn't.
Okay.
You know, but
Yeah.
it was down to the minute.
Yeah.
So I had to run the whole block and.
Oh, no.
This man
That's
ain't
not what
made
these
for
bodies...
running.
These bodies aren't built for running no more. If
So
ever.
I'm sorry if I'm a little out of breath.
No,
but
it's fine.
Also, I do have a grievance to pick with one Kevin Coelho.
Oh, shit.
It seems like the light bar is not the correct color.
You know what I mean?
You're right.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But
Thank
maybe
you.
if
I
you were here
appreciate
for
that.
tech rehearsals,
We would have been good.
You know what I
We
mean?
would've been- little known fact, we actually run the whole show.
we do one
before we
rough
do the
draft
show.
before we
Yeah,
get out there and
yeah.
actually see what happens. How you doing? How you feeling? We just got back from Kansas City
did.
last night. Thank you so much to everybody
Wow.
who came
What a
to the
great
Kind of
convention.
Funny World Tour, Kansas City meetup, and Planet Comic Con. The convention, the panels were amazing. The turnout was the biggest
300
turnout.
people?
Biggest
Yeah, most
turnout
so
we've had.
far.
Yeah. We had the place packed all night long. Was
Yeah,
it only
dude.
300, you think?
Yeah, Matt. Only 300. 300 is a lot of people.
I know it's a lot of people, but I felt like people came and went. People,
They did.
the
They
line never,
definitely did.
the lines never dissipated for us.
If I had to guess, I would say that Arizona was a little over 200. I
Okay.
would say that this was a little over 300.
Gotcha. Okay,
Yeah.
fair. I'll take it. I'll
Well,
take it.
more than that.
It was great.
What was that, Kev?
I said it felt like more than that. A lot of people.
Sure. Yeah. Kev was there too. How you feeling, Kev?
Good.
Yeah? Did you
Yeah,
get some
pretty
sleep
good.
last night?
Yeah, I got some.
Good. That's what I like to see. That's what I like to hear. Portillo's here today. If you're an audio listener, he's on the couch.
Wearing
He's
his
on
little
the,
vest.
wearing his vest. He is wearing his little life preserver, the
I
Hell's
like it.
Kitchen vest.
It's good.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Tim, are you excited to talk about the Drive Club servers shutting down?
Yeah.
Our games being closed today and the repercussions of swatting? I hope so, because this is Kinda Funny Games Daily. Each and every weekday on a variety of platforms, we run you through the nerdy video game news you need to know about. If you like that, be part of the show, patreon.com/kindafunnygames. Over there, you can give us your questions, comments, concerns, bad PSN names, and everything else under the video game sun. Then watch us record the show live on twitch.tv/kindafunnygames. If you're watching live, you have a special job. Go to kindafunny.com/you're wrong and tell us what we screw up as we screw it up, so we can set the record straight for everybody watching later on youtube.com/kindafunnygames, on roosterteeth.com, and listening on podcast services around the globe. Housekeeping for you today. Speaking of roosterteeth.com, all the content over there is free. Nothing is locked behind the RT paywall that is Rooster Teeth First membership. So that means you can finally go watch Waiting for the Punchline for one day only.
Absolutely free. You can go to kindafunny.com/punchline right now, and the video will just play.
Oh, that's a very smart way to do it.
Yeah, it's pretty
okay.
cool. Pretty
We're a
cool. And
smart
happy
one.
16th birthday to Rooster Teeth.
And that means
Sweet
16% off
16.
everything, right?
Does it?
Doesn't it? I thought
I
so.
don't know.
I'm pretty sure I saw
There's
that
so many
somewhere.
sales.
Yeah,
Who
yeah,
knows?
Yeah. When they're 100 years old, it'll be all free.
Yeah, wow.
101, they'll start paying you back.
kindafunny.com/store.
Yeah, exactly.
You know.
I've done no fact checking on it. Saturday, guess what? You're on the clock, New York. The Kinda Funny World Tour comes to Ease Bar in Morningside Heights. This is a 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. meet and greet in New York City. Come out, see us, say hello. Can you, the city that never sleeps, the Big Apple, part of the tri-state area, can you bring in more people than Kansas City? We shall see. If I want to meet somebody from Maine, and I want them to come in wearing a lobster hat.
Yeah, dude. Do it.
Thank you to our Patreon producers, Tom Bach, Blackjack, James, Davis, and Mohammed and Mohammed. Today, we're brought to you by 23andMe and Skillshare, but I'll tell you about that later. For now, let's begin the show with what is and forever will be the Roper Report. Time for some news. 5 items.
A baker's dozen.
I got just a bit of rasp. The Kansas City
Yeah.
bar, I had made a lot of announcements, and their microphone didn't work, so I was yelling from the gut for the first time in a while. I guess I yelled in the panels, too.
Yeah.
Yelled at
Good
Liam.
panels.
Yeah.
That sweet little boy.
That sweet little boy, Liam. Wherever you
R.I.P..
are, we're sorry. We're sorry. I tombstone pile drive you, which was the worst thing I did to you. Don't listen to anybody else on the internet. Number 1. The Drive Club servers are shutting down in 2020. This is a report from Robert Ramsey over at Push Square. Drive Club is nearing the end of its road, it seems. A new notice on PlayStation's official website states that the racing game will be delisted from the 31st of August 2019, meaning that it will no longer be sold in the PlayStation Store. That goes for Drive Club Bikes, Drive Club VR, and all DLC associated with Drive Club. On top of that, the game's servers will be shut down on the 31st of March 2020. You'll still be able to play the offline portions of the release, but all online functionality, the multiplayer, challenges, events, and leaderboards will be lost. It's an announcement that leaves a bitter taste because Drive Club did eventually blossom into a top quality racing title. It received stellar support from developer Evolution Studios before the company was closed back in 2016. It's incredibly unfortunate that the game was never quite able to shake the negativity that had surrounded its shoddy launch in October 2014. First impressions always count for a lot in this rather unforgiving industry. This actually, I saw this obviously get posted over on it was a Friday after Games Daily of last week. We were already in KC. Saw it get posted, and then it got risen up today because Sammy Barker, also at Push Square, put up an editorial kind of really lambasting Sony for this. And I pulled something for it to give us a discussion jump-off point. Little Big Planet may still be running, but why would you ever want to invest time and effort into the upcoming Dreams when the company is acting this way? The thing is, this isn't an isolated incident. Gravity Rush 2 recently had its entire online component removed after fans campaigned to keep it alive for a few months longer. In the case of Cat's sophomore outing, it doesn't actually detract from the game, but it's a bad look all the same. The sequel was barely a year old before it wanted to pull the plug. Killstrain, meanwhile, didn't even get a year. It was shut down and erased from history like it didn't even exist in the first place. Drawn to Death is next in line. Blackjack jumps in with the pertinent question over on patreon.com/kindafunnygames, Tim, and says, "Hey, Greg and Tim, what's good? On Friday, Sony announced the Drive Club will be removed from the PS on August 31st, and servers will be shut down on March 31st. The list of features that will no longer function for the game is quite extensive, as it was designed with online play as a focal point. As exciting as an all-digital future is, should news like this give us pause for multiple reasons?" Let's start there, Tim. What's your takeaway on this?
I feel like it might not be a popular opinion, but I don't think that this is
corporate
the
apologist
end.
motherfucker.
Exactly. Let's go with that. I don't think that this is the end of the world because I don't think that this affects every type of game. It affects a certain genre of games and certain genres of games very much.
Yeah.
But I don't think there's any getting around that. Whether like for the looking at Gravity Rush, right? They're just like, oh, fans petitioned, they want it longer. How many fans were actually petitioning? How many people actually wanted this to keep going? And even then, when would they be happy? 1 more year, 2 more years, 3 more years? It's like there's no point where it's going to be an acceptable answer because people just want it to go on forever. But if people aren't playing forever, enough people aren't playing forever, then it simply doesn't make business sense. Now take the business side out of it. It's just like if there aren't enough people playing to begin with, that's not going to be a great experience for the people playing anyways, right? I think that we just need to understand that video games aren't what they used to be. Video games aren't just you buy the game and you have it, and they haven't been for many years.
Do you think there should be there never will be, is there a right to consumer, is there a right to us as gamers to sit there and we buy a game and we expect this to be online for X amount of years?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think that that's a very fair thing to happen, and I think that should happen, and I think that it might have to eventually. I think that we need to move into that. I just don't think there are enough of these games, enough of these situations that have happened yet to make people go like, oh shit, this is something we actually have to deal with. Right now, there's a group of people that really care. Majority of people don't care at all. You know? Because you look at the games that are online only, that this would be a huge issue. Imagine if World of Warcraft just...
We're pulling the plugs,
gone,
yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
League of Legends, Dota, any of those games, just were like, we're pulling the plug.
Now, keep in mind, they will happen.
Eventually.
Right? Yeah. DC Universe Online is going to close down one day, and I'm going to cry.
Yeah, and it's like, you know, with the ones I said, maybe they won't. You know, it's like we're in a new world where no, it's like people are going to play these things forever because that's what they grew up doing. But I do think that there needs to be some type of promise of like at least how long this will last, how long that experience will be up there for. I mean, they're putting these dates out there. You know, it's not like the consumers have anything to do or say about it, but didn't they already have something to say about it when they didn't buy the game?
Sure.
You know?
Yeah, it's a ball of wax right now, and I feel it's one of those situations where I don't think there is we're never going to get a thing. Maybe you'll get going forward on big budget titles. Like, you know, at not even what do they call it? PlayStation State of Play before E3. That's not E3. They'll announce a new racing game. All this online stuff. And then in an interview, somebody's going to pin Sean Layden down and be like, hey, what about this? Maybe he's going to say, we've built this with in mind that it's going to be online for at least 3 years, right? Even then, people are going to be like, that's not long enough. Even then, I can't imagine they're actually doing that they're making these games saying it's going, because this is a dollar and cents things, right? Like, as Push Square brings up here, they talk about Killstrain, right? And Drawn to Death. both those games designed to be online only, right? Those were the ways to play those games, is to go on. And I think Drawn to Death might have had a single player like tutorial, but you know what I mean. It was meant to be played arena shooter. Killstrain was PlayStation's answer to mobile. Both of those were experiments, and I'm probably too close in terms of covering those games, but I remember Sony San Diego being like, these are experiments. We're trying stuff out. The fact that Drawn to Death, kindoffunny.com/you're-wrong, was designed to be a free-to-play game, right? And then the free-to-play market changed, and Guns Up did fine. Killstrain took forever and nobody liked, and then they made Drawn to Death actually a paid thing, which people got cranky about in the same way. Not cranky about, but it was that thing of like, it's a game nobody cared about already, let alone then they tried to do that and it didn't work. And the same thing happened with Lawbreakers, if you remember, where Lawbreakers was supposed to be free to play. And then Boss Key was like, you know what, no, while we've been working on this, the market's already changed. What's interesting about all this is I don't think there's a solution. I don't think there's an answer. I think what we're talking about, you will see more of. I think you will see, as we go forward, bigger developers and bigger publishers being more as honest as they can be. Of, we're making an online game, we believe in it, and we think if you believe in it, it can go on for decades. However, if you're not, it can't. So we're promising you a full year of free content. Hopefully there'll be more. Hopefully we can do expansions, blah, 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 all these different things. But then there is this weird reality we have to face, and they face as publishers and developers, right? Of, for Drive Club in particular, right? Like, there isn't even a studio that works on that game anymore. Like, Evolution's gone. So then it is like, yeah, all right, cool. We see the daily stats of who's playing and what they are and how many people are using all these really intricate features that rely on these servers. What do we do if those numbers do dip below where they're actually costing us money, where there's no way we're ever going to make more of a return on this money? You talk about like a successful product and a launch and how many copies you need to sell. What about when we cross that line where now we're eating into what the thing actually moved? Let alone Drive Club, not that great as an example as Push Square brings up, because that was such a quagmire. That was such a bunch of failed, fucked up promises.
Like a lot of the games that they were talking about here have similar situations. I think Gravity Rush might be the only exception to that.
And Gravity Rush's online thing was so not like a main thing.
Yeah, it's like that was a feature of the game, not what the game was. Yeah, exactly. Right. We're just moving into a different place, and whether that's good or bad, it's the reality. Like I remember, I collect music. I enjoy music. I am a fan of collecting physical albums, whether they're vinyls or CDs, specifically for a certain artist. And I'll never forget, at this point, 15 years ago, when they first put out digital-only EPs, and how upset I was.
Yeah,
I was like, I can't own this. Like, what's going to happen when this just doesn't, when it's taken down and doesn't exist anymore? But then I realized the way for me to collect this, I need to have hard drives with these MP3s backed up so that I own them, so that I have these.
Blackjack continues. My biggest concern isn't even as a consumer, but as a lover of video games and their rich history. Drive Club was a game with a long and troubled development. It was one of the first PlayStation 4 games ever showcased on stage. There were hundreds of people who poured their hearts into it, even if the final product was critically underwhelming. If the video game world was all digital right now, then Drive Club would essentially be lost forever. Should Sony be allowed to simply wipe any game from existence? How will we chronicle the stories of the developers and the games they worked on if we can no longer play the games ourselves? Should physical media continue to exist in perpetuity so that we may always be allowed to reflect on history? Love you guys, Blackjack.
It's such a nice sentiment, but that's just not how. That's not feasible. That's not realistic. And again, we're talking about a subsect of games. We're not talking about all games.
Sure.
I will be shocked if the God of Wars of the world don't get released in physical form for years to come.
Yeah.
Many, many, many years to come. Hopefully to the point that a digital-only future, like I feel like when we say that, we don't actually mean digital only.
Digital majority.
It means you can go digital only, I think is really what we're trying to get at, right? I don't think that even when that comes, that we're going to not have physical if you want that as an option. And
it's going to be like vinyl. I've always say it's like vinyl. The people still press these discs. They'll just understand. It'll be limited run kind of things.
Yeah, and I do think that eventually, far, far, far in the future, when it is a digital-only situation, there will be ways to own the digital side in the same way I can own MP3s.
Yeah.
Right, and have them backed up myself in ways that I can launch them whenever I want. Games get more complicated because if you're talking about servers and you're talking about, gameplay functions that are tied to playing with other people, I don't know, that does get hard. And yeah, like the history of video games is important, but at the end of the day, is that importance worth the dollars and cents to a company that doesn't care? The answer is no.
Well, I think again, when we talk about hypotheticals, we tend to talk in such black and white, right? Of, okay, it's digital. Okay, this is it. Okay, Sony's wiping their games from their servers, blah, blah. To Blackjack's point, should Sony be allowed to simply wipe any game they want from existence? Yes, 100%. Sorry, I know that's not a popular opinion, but Sony is a company. They are a private entity. They're allowed to do what they want with their PSN. We're allowed not to agree with it. I'm allowed to think it's ridiculous you still don't have name changes or the beta or whatever, or how they've treated where the fuck's Patapon to. I'm allowed to have all these opinions. It doesn't mean that Sony isn't allowed to do that, especially the way it's being phrased. Like, should Sony be allowed to? Well, yeah, it's their thing. It's their ball. If you don't like how they play with it, don't go to their yard kind of thing, which isn't a great answer, I know. However, dialing it back, though, I feel like to get out of the black and white of this, you have to look at people like myself who every time I transfer a PlayStation 4, I make sure I transfer PT. Like, PT isn't available anywhere, but I still have PT. And I feel like as we get going, that's how you get into this more and more, right? Is that, all right, cool, there is a subset of people like you, Blackjack, that care a lot about video game history and go out of their way to maintain libraries and keep arcade cabinets running. Like, I mean, in a similar thing, should Midway be allowed to stop producing the switches for certain arcade cabinets from, well, you know what I mean? Like shit like that. Like, it's how technology and a consumer industry moves. It's up to people who care about that to keep that going. Exactly. Now, again, that gets dangerous when, what about when all the PlayStation 4s finally break and you can't get to PT or whatever and blah, blah. That's reality. But I also think we've moved to a point that it sucks to see things lost to history when you talk about it like that. But again, how many with YouTube and channels and video property in general, like no game's ever truly lost again, is it? Like, we're going to be able to go watch it. Granted, you won't be able to play it, and I know that's not the same thing, but I can't tell you as somebody who covers video games professionally the amount of games I know about but have not played. I've never played Custard's Last Stand, right? But I've watched enough of it and been like, oh, I get what's going on here. Now, granted, that's notable for a different reason, notorious for a different reason. Yeah. Than, hey, this. But again, are we looking at this and go, and I don't mean to think that video games are disposable, but did Drive Club do something so awe-inspiring and different that we think no one's ever going to do it again or better? And to the point that if I'm playing, and stick with me, 20 years from now, there's a new racing game out on whatever platform we're all playing. It's being beamed into our eyeballs. And we're playing it, and we're amazing. And somebody's like, well, this all started 20 years ago with Drive Club. Does watching a YouTube video of what they're talking about, what mechanic they're doing, not explain it enough? And granted, I know, it'd be better to play it. It'd be better able to have that. Again, to what we're talking about, we're not crazy that they're taking the servers offline. They're going to stop selling the game. If you already own the game, you own the game. It's on your PlayStation 4. Theoretically, and I could be talking about my ass. Sean Layton, you're welcome to write in. I don't think I guess it's being delisted is what they said, right? Hold on. Let me try to walk through this.
Because another thing is, if they stop putting dates out when they're going to take it down, I think it would be a bit more like icky. Yeah. Like if it just was gone today, then I could see a big problem, right?
See, it's being delisted on August 31st, 2019, meaning it'll be no longer sold in the PlayStation Store. But if I still have it on my licenses and I bought it, I should still be able to download it, correct? And you're wrong me if you have information on that, but I doubt you do unless there's been an article or some statement about a different game, but I'm not sure on that one. It'll still be there, and there was a disc for Drive Club, so you can get it that way and have it forever and play it that way too. You won't have the online functionality of it, but again, I'm from a novice person who played Drive Club at events, and just racing games don't do it for me. Did it do something that we needed to worry about and like keep it there? But I know that Blackjack was expanding his a bit further out into it, right?
VR was really cool, and weren't they like the first people to put it?
Well, yeah, because they were like back when it was the Morpheus, they were ones who were like, we're looking around, toying with it, and doing stuff. Yeah. I agree.
Like, I'll still have that.
Exactly. Yeah, you can still do that. Yeah. Were you racing online with it, right? Like, was that?
No, but afterwards it did show you other people's numbers.
Sure.
And like there was the.
And that's cool. I'm not trying to say that ain't cool.
Yeah.
I mean, it's an unfortunate truth that we're in. Like a perfect example for me is Amplitude, the PS4 version. Yeah. At some point, I'm never going to be able to play that game again. Like, there's no way that the licensing in my PSN account and my PS4 dies, and no matter how many times I transfer or whatever, at some point, I don't think I'm going to be able to play that game again. And that is very unfortunate. And I wonder what the solution to that is, because is that true? Am I wrong? With PT, you can still get PT if you're trying to get PT. You know, it might not be through a way that is easy and just Sony's giving it to you, but you can find PT if you need PT. I wonder if I'll be able to find Amplitude one day, and I imagine that you will. Look at video game history so far. Like, I grew up not having all these games, but I knew about them, and I had access to all of them if I wanted to, right?
Wink and a nudge. I got you.
I imagine people are going to continue figure out ways forever, right? Halo Combat Evolved, the first Halo, didn't have online until fans made it have online. If there's a community, they'll make it online again, right? Halo's not the best example for that, but Tony Hawk Pro Skater, right? The servers went down years ago. You could play Tony Hawk's Pro Skater online today, or Underground online today.
Sure.
Because the fans made that happen. Not the same at all.
Yeah.
But it's the spirit of the history. It's the spirit of what you're looking for.
That's the biggest thing. Is I think it's easier for us to talk about what's come before than what we think is going to happen after, because we don't know how this all works out in the end. And we could be wrong, and it could be a scary future. And yeah, these things are lost, and you can't play them anywhere because every PlayStation 4 breaks on 2030. Nobody, you know what I mean? April 1st, 2030. Every PlayStation bugs out and locks up and goes down or something. It's I don't know. It's a weird thing to wrestle with, I guess, but. It's also because but even, I guess that's the thing is I feel like this could be a Fortnite crossplay or a cross progression system where I didn't care too much about it till it directly affected me. Where I was like, wait, now that I understand this problem, it's stupid.
And that's why I try to bring up Amplitude.
Even right now, exactly with DC Universe Online, I'd love to be able to jump in every so often for the rest of my life. But I'm aware that I've put hundreds of dollars into that game, let alone hundreds of hours, and one day it's just going to be gone. But for me, it will be that I'll go back and watch a video of it and remember it more than I need to jump back in and be like, wait, what do I do? How do I do? I was rolling a controller now, but I need to be a DPS. They changed out the load. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like I came to, when I got my ticket punched on that one, I came to terms with that's how it's going to be. And the same things of, and maybe I'm being naive and just talking too much from my own perspective. When I bought other games that had online, service that wasn't peer-to-peer, or I was going to somebody else's servers, I understood that one day that might not be there. And that, those trophies would be, untouchable in terms of stuff I care about. Yeah. Like when they shut down the Ghostbuster servers or whatever. Like, okay, cool, whatever. But I understood that price of engagement when I did it.
I've seen so many people talk about this in many other ways and other news stories that have happened in the last couple of months and talk about, like, how can you expect a digital future to be reality when things like this happen? And I just feel like people's understanding or like what they're looking for in this digital future is different than me. Because I'm looking at it as a supplement, in addition to my normal gaming habits, right?
Yeah.
Having Xbox Games Pass is not the only way I'm going to play games. It's like if I want other games, I'm going to buy it because I want to have it on my system, so I don't need to worry about cloud stuff. I don't need to worry, and I know you can download from that, but like, do you see what I'm saying? It's like it's 100%. Always just kind of extra, and video games are now hitting the point that they have with movies that they have with video games, where it's like I buy movies in 4K Ultra HD Blu-ray when I love them and care about them. Otherwise, they are disposable. That's what Netflix is for, and Amazon Prime and Hulu and all these things. I see them as it's just disposable content that I'm enjoying, and I feel like video games are turning that way too. And when I see that differently, I need to shell out the money to get the version that I want. And then it's not going to exist for every game in the same way it doesn't exist for every movie, doesn't exist for every MP3 and album that comes out. But if you care about this stuff, you got to take initiative and back things up. I have extensive hard drives and backups of my music because I care about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because there's so much stuff that if I lost my hard drives, it's not online anymore. I'll never be able to get it again. But I am an understanding of that I need to preserve that myself.
Sure.
I can't count on anyone else doing that.
Yeah. And I think then it comes down to, what is your... And this is where it gets so weird when we talk about ownership of games, right? I don't think it's up to Sony to protect that stuff. It's up to you to protect that stuff, or any publisher, you know what I mean, in terms of what matters to you. And then, if you are a Drive Club person, Gravity